There comes a time in our lives when we find ourselves at a crossroads, a moment when the strength to stay is no longer greater than the courage it takes to walk away. Today, I want to talk about the power, resilience, and bravery of leaving silently. I'm talking about the quiet goodbyes we don't always see or celebrate, yet are often the bravest decisions of all. Absolutely, here's an expanded look at the idea of courage and silence. Courage isn't always about standing on a stage or fighting a loud battle. Often the deepest courage comes from the quietest places within us, in the moments where we decide to walk away, step back, or even let go without a word. Choosing silence over confrontation, stillness over chaos, requires a strength that's often undervalued, but incredibly powerful. When we talk about courage, we often imagine bold actions, grand speeches, or public stands. But courage comes in many forms, and one of the most transformative is the courage to be silent when silence is what we need. Leaving quietly is not about being passive. It's about actively choosing peace over pride, reflection over retaliation. It's about valuing ourselves enough to know when to release rather than resist, when to end the battle within us rather than escalate the one outside. The act of leaving silently, of ending a relationship, a job, or a situation without anger or drama can be one of the hardest choices we make. Silence in these moments becomes an act of self-preservation, a way to shield our hearts and minds from unnecessary noise. It's a way of saying, I honor myself enough to protect my energy, to preserve my peace. And this isn't about running away or avoiding conflict. It's about recognizing that not every struggle is ours to engage in. There is immense strength in walking away without slamming doors or needing to justify ourselves. This kind of silent courage asks us to trust ourselves deeply, to believe that we don't need others to understand or approve our decision for it to be the right one. We validate our own choice. Choosing silence means we're comfortable with the knowledge that our worth isn't tied to what others think or say about us. It's realizing that we have the power to define our own boundaries, and that sometimes stepping away from something silently can speak volumes about our self-worth, maturity, and respect for our own well-being. Silence gives us space to reflect, to heal, and to focus on what truly matters. When we choose silence over making a scene, we honor not only ourselves, but also the time and energy we invested. Leaving in silence shows we don't need to tear down someone or something to build ourselves up. It shows that we've outgrown the need for validation and are ready to walk our own path without dragging along resentment or the need to be right. This kind of courage isn't easy. It often means facing the discomfort of leaving without final words or an explanation. But in doing so, we reclaim our strength. We give ourselves the permission to leave and to grow in the direction of peace without looking back. Courage in silence is about trusting ourselves to know when it's time to move on, and to do so with dignity. So remember, sometimes the quietest action can be the bravest. Courage doesn't need applause or approval. It only needs your decision to honor yourself, silently but powerfully, certainly. Here's an expanded exploration of boundaries and respect. Creating and honoring boundaries is one of the most profound forms of self-respect. When we set boundaries, we're saying, I know what I need, I know what I deserve, and I'm going to stand up for it. It's a simple statement, but one that takes strength, clarity, and self-awareness. Boundaries are not walls, they're doors that open in and out of our lives only when it feels safe, enriching, or mutually respectful to do so. And leaving silently without a need for justification or argument can be one of the most effective ways of respecting those boundaries. Setting boundaries is often mistaken for selfishness or avoidance. But boundaries aren't about excluding others, they're about including ourselves. They serve as a line that defines where we end and others begin, helping us maintain emotional clarity and mental health. Without boundaries, we may find ourselves caught up in situations, relationships, or obligations that drain us, pulling us away from our own goals, values, and well-being. Boundaries protect our time, energy, and peace, making sure that what we give and receive aligns with who we truly are. Respecting boundaries is equally important, both for ourselves and in how we interact with others. By acknowledging and respecting our own boundaries, We're not only giving ourselves permission to protect our needs, but also setting a powerful example for those around us. We teach people how to treat us by what we're willing to accept, and respecting our boundaries shows others that our self-worth is non-negotiable. If someone repeatedly disregards or challenges our boundaries, we're within our right to distance ourselves, sometimes quietly and without confrontation. This is an act of self-respect, a message to ourselves that we're worth the effort of moving on when others don't respect our value. Walking away silently when our boundaries are crossed is a way to reinforce our standards without creating unnecessary friction. It's saying, I don't need to explain or defend my boundaries to you. They are here and I honor them. This isn't about avoiding difficult conversations. It's about knowing when a conversation has run its course and further engagement would only harm us. We owe it to ourselves to ensure that our time and energy aren't spent trying to convince someone to respect us. Instead, we can quietly, calmly, and confidently step back, knowing that by respecting our boundaries, we're making a powerful statement of self-worth. When we hold strong to our boundaries, we also become clearer on who we allow into our lives. Those who genuinely respect us will honor our boundaries, just as we honor theirs. They'll understand that respecting someone's space, time, and needs isn't a burden, it's the very foundation of meaningful relationships. Boundaries help us build connections that are mutual, understanding, and resilient. They ensure that we're surrounded by people who value us for who we are, not what we can provide at the expense of ourselves. Respecting boundaries also means understanding that everyone else has their own needs and limits, even if they differ from ours. When we respect others' boundaries, we show them that we value their well-being and autonomy. Just as we deserve to be respected, so do they. By upholding this standard, we're creating a culture of respect and self-worth in all of our relationships. We're showing that boundaries are not a rejection of others, they're an affirmation of the value of each person's unique self. In the end, boundaries are about recognizing our own worth and the worth of others. They are a form of self-respect, a testament to our personal growth, and a pathway to authentic relationships. Respecting our own boundaries and leaving when they're not honored empowers us to live in alignment with our truest selves. It lets us protect the space we need to thrive, to grow, and to move forward with clarity and peace. So remember, boundaries are not barriers, they are bridges to healthier, more fulfilling connections with others and with ourselves. When we have the courage to set and uphold them, we're showing the world that we honor our worth and respect the worth of others, of course. Here's an expanded reflection on strength without validation. In a world that often celebrates the visible, the outspoken, and the applauded, finding strength without seeking validation can feel like an uphill journey. Yet it is one of the most profound and liberating forms of inner power. When we reach a place where we no longer need approval, acknowledgement, or agreement to stand firm in our truth, we unlock a resilience that no one can take from us. True strength lies not in the opinions or validations of others, but in the quiet assurance that we know who we are, what we value, and what path we're meant to walk. Seeking validation is something we're all conditioned to do to some degree. From a young age, we're often encouraged to look outside ourselves for approval, whether it's praise from parents, grades from teachers, or recognition from peers. And while external validation can be encouraging, it becomes limiting when we start to rely on it for our sense of self-worth. Constantly seeking validation keeps us dependent on others' perceptions of us, rather than on our own beliefs and values. It means that our confidence can waver with a single criticism, disapproval, or lack of recognition. But strength without validation is about learning to trust ourselves. It's about developing an internal compass that guides us even when we're alone, even when others disagree, and even when the road gets lonely. It's the kind of strength that allows us to make decisions that honor our own truth, regardless of what others might say. This strength reminds us that our worth isn't conditional. It doesn't depend on whether others see it or acknowledge it. It's something we carry within us, unwavering and constant, regardless of external approval. Leaving a situation, relationship, or environment that no longer serves us without seeking validation is a perfect example of this kind of strength. When we walk away silently without needing to justify, explain, or prove ourselves, we're making a statement that our own understanding is enough. We don't need others to agree with our reasons because our decision is rooted in our own insight, not in external validation. This doesn't mean we don't value others' perspectives. It simply means we value our own self-awareness enough to act on it without needing consensus. Strength without validation allows us to live with integrity, even when our choices are unpopular or misunderstood. It gives us the courage to pursue paths that others might not understand or support. I think about the people in history who followed their convictions even in the face of widespread disapproval. Their strength didn't come from public approval, it came from an unshakable inner belief that they were doing what was right for them or for a cause they believed in deeply. That's the power of inner strength that isn't swayed by applause, and it doesn't crumble under criticism. Cultivating strength without validation also means learning to be comfortable with ourselves. We become our own source of support and encouragement. This inner reliance means that we're no longer at the mercy of others' shifting opinions, nor are we tempted to compromise our values just to fit in. It's a strength that keeps us rooted, regardless of whether others acknowledge or appreciate it. It enables us to stay grounded, to pursue what matters to us, and to embrace our journey, knowing that our worth is not dependent on anyone else's approval. Of course, letting go of validation seeking isn't always easy. It requires a deep level of self-trust, a willingness to face potential isolation, and a commitment to our own well-being. But the freedom that comes with it is profound. When we no longer look to others for validation, we become empowered to live authentically. We gain the courage to say no to what doesn't serve us, and yes to what genuinely aligns with our values, desires, and needs. We don't need to argue, convince, or seek permission to be who we are. Our lives are ours to define. And that is a power no one can take. Away.of course. Here's an expanded reflection on strength without validation. Strength without validation is liberating, not only for ourselves, but also for those around us. When we stand firm in who we are without needing constant reassurance, we inspire others to do the same. We show them that it's possible to be whole, complete, and at peace without endless external approval. By modeling this inner strength, we encourage others to find their own, to live their truth without fear, and to break free from the constant need for validation. Ultimately, the journey to strength without validation is about discovering that our worth isn't negotiable, conditional, or dependent on others. It's a steady, unshakable sense of self that allows us to act in ways that honor our deepest values, regardless of outside opinions. This strength allows us to walk away, to stand firm, to pursue dreams, and to live in alignment with who we truly are. It gives us the courage to be true to ourselves, and in doing so, to find a peace that no external validation could ever provide. So remember, true strength is knowing you're enough without the need for applause. It's about honoring yourself without waiting for others to affirm it. It's about walking forward with confidence, grounded in the knowledge that you are whole, worthy, and complete just as you are certainly. Here's an expanded perspective on protecting our peace. In a world that's constantly moving, filled with demands, distractions, and pressures, protecting our peace has become essential to our mental, emotional, and even physical well-being. Peace is not just the absence of conflict, it's a deep, internal sense of calm, stability, and clarity. It's the feeling of being centered, balanced, and grounded, even when life around us is anything but. When we talk about protecting our peace, we're talking about making a conscious decision to put our well-being first, to safeguard the spaces within us that keep us whole and resilient. Protecting our peace often means establishing boundaries that may not always make sense to others but are necessary for our well-being. It means giving ourselves permission to say no to people, obligations, and even opportunities that disrupt our equilibrium. It's about recognizing what drains us, what disturbs our mental clarity, and what keeps us from feeling grounded, and then taking active steps to distance ourselves from those influences. Whether it's choosing to step away from toxic relationships, limiting our exposure to constant negativity, or managing our time in a way that allows us to rest, protecting our peace is a commitment to preserving our inner world. One of the most challenging parts of protecting our peace is realizing that it sometimes requires us to leave situations or relationships quietly without explanation or closure. This can feel difficult because we're often taught to resolve everything, to communicate our feelings, or to fix problems. But not every situation is meant to be resolved, and not every person is willing or able to understand our perspective. Sometimes the most powerful way to protect our peace is to walk away, knowing that silence can be a shield that protects us from further hurt, frustration, or misunderstanding. We don't have to explain or justify our choices to those who won't respect our boundaries. We can simply step back, let go, and preserve our own well-being. Protecting our peace is also about managing our relationship with ourselves. It means being mindful of our thoughts, emotions, and inner dialogue. We often experience the most turmoil not because of what others do or say, but because of the stories we tell ourselves. Protecting our peace requires self-compassion, an awareness of when we're being too hard on ourselves, and a willingness to forgive our own mistakes and imperfections. By learning to treat ourselves with kindness and grace, we build an inner environment that is more resilient to the ups and downs of life. We stop letting self-doubt, guilt, or regret rob us of the peace we deserve. Another key aspect of protecting our peace is choosing what we allow into our minds and lives. The media we consume, the people we surround ourselves with, and even the environments we spend time in can have a profound effect on our mental and emotional state. Protecting our peace means being intentional about our choices, seeking out the people, activities, and spaces that uplift us and bring us joy while minimizing exposure to those that drain us. It's about curating our lives in a way that nurtures our spirit, allowing us to show up as our best selves for ourselves and others. Protecting our peace also requires embracing the concept of letting go. Sometimes we hold on to people, situations, or beliefs long past their expiration dates because we feel an obligation to see things through, or because change feels too difficult. But clinging to what no longer serves us only creates stress, anxiety, and inner conflict. Letting go is an act of courage and acknowledgement that our peace is worth more than our attachment to what used to be. By releasing the weight of what we cannot change, we make space for growth, healing, and new possibilities. Letting go is not about giving up, it's about freeing ourselves to move forward. Perhaps one of the most rewarding aspects of protecting our peace is that it allows us to be more present, engaged, and authentic in our lives. When we're at peace within ourselves, we're better able to connect with others from a place of kindness, empathy, and passion. Our relationships become more fulfilling because we're not bringing unresolved turmoil or resentment into our interactions. We're able to listen more openly, support others more fully, and experience life more deeply because our hearts and minds aren't clouded by constant inner conflict. Ultimately, protecting our peace is about choosing ourselves every single day. It's a commitment to prioritize what keeps us balanced, healthy, and whole. It's about valuing our inner world enough to make the tough choices necessary to maintain it, even when others might not understand. And while protecting our peace can feel like a solitary journey at times, it's a journey that allows us to bring our most authentic, vibrant selves into the world. So remember, protecting our peace isn't selfish, it's essential. It's a form of self-respect, a way of honoring our own worth. By protecting our peace, we create a sanctuary within ourselves, a place of calm and strength that certainly. Here's a deeper look at choosing self-respect over explanation. Choosing self-respect over the need to explain ourselves is a powerful act of self-affirmation. It's a decision to prioritize our own understanding, our own dignity, and our own well-being, rather than feeling obligated to justify our choices to others. In a world where people often expect explanations for our decisions, especially those that involve walking away, setting boundaries, or choosing a different path, choosing self-respect over explanation is a radical statement. It says, I trust myself, I value myself, and I don't need permission to honor my needs. The impulse to explain ourselves often stems from the desire to be understood, accepted, or validated. Many of us feel compelled to justify our choices because we want others to see things from our perspective, to validate our feelings, or to avoid conflict. But explanations can be draining. especially when the person we're explaining ourselves to isn't open to truly hearing or respecting our point of view. Sometimes no amount of explaining will lead to understanding. People may be too focused on their own perspective to truly appreciate ours. In these moments, choosing self-respect over explanation can be a profound act of liberation, a way of letting go of the need for validation and trusting that our decisions are enough. Choosing self-respect over explanation is also a way of setting boundaries. When we stop explaining ourselves, we're essentially saying, I trust my judgment, and I don't owe anyone an explanation for honoring my boundaries. It's about recognizing that we don't have to justify our needs or our boundaries to anyone. Those who respect us will respect our boundaries without needing extensive explanations, while those who continually question or challenge our boundaries may not truly respect us. By choosing self-respect over explanation, we reclaim our power and create space for healthier, more respectful relationships. At its core, self-respect is about believing in our own worth, our own insight, and our own right to make choices that align with our values and well-being. When we make decisions rooted in self-respect, we're affirming our right to prioritize our needs, even if others don't fully understand. This doesn't mean we're being dismissive or closed off. It means we're recognizing that our worth isn't dependent on others' approval. We don't need everyone to understand our choices in order for those choices to be valid. When we honor our self-respect, we're saying, I am enough. My understanding of my needs is enough. Choosing self-respect over explanation also gives us peace. Constantly explaining ourselves can be exhausting. It often leads to second-guessing, self-doubt, and even resentment, especially if others question or undermine our reasoning. When we feel compelled to explain, we may end up diluting our own truth, bending our words to fit someone else's perspective, or even compromising our values to avoid conflict. This can leave us feeling disconnected from ourselves, as if we're not truly honoring our own voice. But when we choose self-respect, we free ourselves from this cycle. We're able to stand firm in our decisions without feeling the need to over-explain or justify. This brings a sense of clarity, calm, and inner peace that allows us to move forward with confidence. Sometimes choosing self-respect over explanation means we have to accept that others may not understand or agree with our choices. This can be challenging, especially when it involves people we care about. But respecting ourselves doesn't mean disrespecting others. It simply means valuing our own perspective and trusting our own journey. We don't need to convince others of our worth or our reasons. By choosing self-respect, we're allowing ourselves to grow in our own direction, to walk our own path, and to trust that those who truly care for us will respect our right to make choices that align with our own well-being. It's also important to recognize that choosing self-respect over explanation doesn't mean we're being unkind or unwilling to communicate. There's a difference between setting boundaries with self-respect and shutting people out. Choosing not to explain ourselves simply means that we're releasing the need for approval. We're embracing a sense of self-assurance that allows us to make decisions in alignment with our truth without feeling obligated to seek others' permission or validation. It's an act of maturity, a sign that we're comfortable enough, certainly. Here's a deeper look at choosing self-respect over explanation. Choosing self-respect over the need to explain ourselves is a powerful act of self-affirmation. It's a decision to prioritize our own understanding, our own dignity, and our own well-being, rather than feeling obligated to justify our choices to others. In a world where people often expect explanations for our decisions, especially those that involve walking away, setting boundaries, or choosing a different path, choosing self-respect over explanation is a radical statement. It says, I trust myself, I value myself, and I don't need permission to honor my needs. The impulse to explain ourselves often stems from the desire to be understood, accepted, or validated. Many of us feel compelled to justify our choices because we want others to see things from our perspective, to validate our feelings, or to avoid conflict. But explanations can be draining, especially when the person we're explaining ourselves to isn't open to truly hearing or respecting our point of view. Sometimes no amount of explaining will lead to understanding. People may be too focused on their own perspective to truly appreciate ours. In these moments, choosing self-respect over explanation can be a profound act of liberation, a way of letting go of the need for validation and trusting that our decisions are enough. Choosing self-respect over explanation is also a way of setting boundaries. When we stop explaining ourselves, we're essentially saying, I trust my judgment, and I don't owe anyone an explanation for honoring my boundaries. It's about recognizing that we don't have to justify our needs or our boundaries to anyone. Those who respect us will respect our boundaries without needing extensive explanations, while those who continually question or challenge our boundaries may not truly respect us. By choosing self-respect over explanation, we reclaim our power and create space for healthier, more respectful relationships. At its core, self-respect is about believing in our own worth, our own insight, and our own right to make choices that align with our values and well-being. When we make decisions rooted in self-respect, we're affirming our right to prioritize our needs, even if others don't fully understand. This doesn't mean we're being dismissive or closed off. It means we're recognizing that our worth isn't dependent on others' approval. We don't need everyone to understand our choices in order for those choices to be valid. When we honor our self-respect, we're saying, I am enough. My understanding of my needs is enough. Choosing self-respect over explanation also gives us peace. Constantly explaining ourselves can be exhausting. It often leads to second-guessing, self-doubt, and even resentment, especially if others question or undermine our reasoning. When we feel compelled to explain, we may end up diluting our own truth, bending our words to fit someone else's perspective, or even compromising our values to avoid conflict. This can leave us feeling disconnected from ourselves, as if we're not truly honoring our own voice. But when we choose self-respect, we free ourselves from the cycle. We're able to stand firm in our decisions without feeling the need to over-explain or justify. This brings a sense of clarity, calm, and inner peace that allows us to move forward with confidence. Sometimes choosing self-respect over explanation means we have to accept that others may not understand or agree with our choices. This can be challenging, especially when it involves people we care about. But respecting ourselves doesn't mean disrespecting others. It simply means valuing our own perspective and trusting our own journey. We don't need to convince others of our worth or our reasons. By choosing self-respect, we're allowing ourselves to grow in our own direction, to walk our own path, and to trust that those who truly care for us will respect our right to make choices that align with our own well-being. It's also important to recognize that choosing self-respect over explanation doesn't mean we're being unkind or unwilling to communicate. There's a difference between setting boundaries with self-respect and shutting people out. Choosing not to explain ourselves simply means that we're releasing the need for approval. We're embracing a sense of self-assurance that allows us to make decisions in alignment with our truth without feeling obligated to seek others' permission or validation. It's an act of maturity, a sign that we're comfortable enough. You said certainly. Here's an expanded perspective on honoring the past, embracing the future. Honoring the past while embracing the future is a delicate balance between acknowledging where we've come from and being open to where we're going. It's about recognizing the value of our experiences, the lessons we've learned, and the growth we've achieved, while still allowing ourselves to move forward, adapt, and grow. This balance requires us to carry our history with respect and gratitude without letting it hold us back from new possibilities and opportunities. Honoring the past means more than just remembering events or milestones. It's about acknowledging the people, experiences, and even the struggles that shaped us. Our past holds countless moments, both joyful and painful, that contributed to who we are today. When we honor the past, we're recognizing the importance of these moments. We're saying, I respect where I've been, and I recognize the role it played in bringing me to where I am now. This kind of reflection can be deeply healing, as it allows us to see our lives as a journey of growth, resilience, and self-discovery. At the same time, honoring the past doesn't mean we have to stay tied to it. Sometimes our past includes challenges, failures, or painful experiences that are hard to let go of. While it's essential to acknowledge these parts of our history, We don't have to let them define us or limit our future. Embracing the future means understanding that our past doesn't determine our destiny. It's part of our story, but it's not the whole story. We have the power to rewrite our narrative, to take the lessons we've learned and use them as a foundation to build a brighter future. In this way, honoring the past allows us to extract valuable insights that we can carry forward. The experiences we've gone through, whether they were difficult, joyful, or transformative, have all provided us with wisdom. Maybe we learned the importance of resilience, the value of self-love, or the strength of forgiveness. By recognizing these lessons, we can bring them into our future choices, allowing us to make decisions that align with our values and aspirations. Honoring the past is about respecting the journey we've been on and using that knowledge to navigate the road ahead. Embracing the future, however, requires us to open ourselves up to change, to the unknown, and to the possibility that our lives might look very different from what we once envisioned. This can be both exciting and intimidating. Moving forward often means letting go of certain aspects of our past that no longer serve us, old beliefs, habits, or relationships that we may have outgrown. This is not about discarding our history, but rather about evolving beyond it. Embracing the future invites us to step into a space of growth and expansion, to welcome new experiences and opportunities that might stretch us and help us become more of who we are meant to be. Honoring the past while embracing the future also allows us to forgive ourselves and others. Sometimes we carry guilt, regret, or resentment from past mistakes or missed opportunities. But moving forward means we have to let go of these burdens, to release ourselves from the weight of things we cannot change. By honoring the past, we acknowledge that we did the best we could with the knowledge and resources we had at the time. Embracing the future then becomes an act of self-compassion. It's about giving ourselves permission to move forward free from the constraints of past regrets. Moreover, balancing respect for the past with a willingness to embrace the future enables us to remain adaptable and open-minded. Life is constantly changing, and each new chapter brings new lessons, relationships, and challenges. By honoring our past, we ground ourselves in a sense of continuity and identity. We carry our values, memories, and experiences as a source of strength and perspective. But by embracing the future, we allow ourselves to be flexible, to learn, and to adapt to the world as it changes. This adaptability makes us more resilient, capable of thriving no matter what life brings our way. Honoring the past and embracing the future is also about gratitude and hope. When we look back, we often find moments that we can appreciate the people who supported us, the opportunities we were given, the inner strength we discovered. Gratitude for the past allows us to look at our lives with a sense of fulfillment, recognizing the richness of our journey. Embracing the future, on the other hand, invites us to hold on to hope, to trust that there are beautiful moments yet to come, even if we can't yet see them. It's the belief that our lives are still unfolding, and that every ending creates space for a new beginning. In the end, honoring the past while embracing the future allows us to live fully in the present. We are neither clinging to what was nor fearing what will be. Instead, we are grounded in our experiences and open to walking away can be one of the most challenging, yet ultimately empowering decisions we make in our lives. It often means leaving behind familiar people, environments, or situations that we've invested in emotionally, mentally, or even financially. But sometimes the act of walking away is not about giving up or abandoning something. It's about choosing ourselves, our well-being, and our potential for growth. It's about recognizing that certain relationships, circumstances, or routines have become limiting rather than fulfilling, and that moving forward requires us to let go. Walking away is a commitment to growth, and it is often a brave first step toward becoming the person we're meant to be. To walk away is to listen to our own needs, to hear that small, persistent voice inside us that knows when something no longer serves our growth. Often we stay in situations because we feel obligated or because we fear change. We convince ourselves that it's better to stick it out, to remain loyal, to avoid disrupting the status quo. But these justifications can keep us stuck in cycles that don't allow us to fully develop. Growth requires change, and change often requires walking away from what's comfortable but no longer aligned with who we are or who we want to become. This kind of decision is not easy, but it's an act of self-respect and courage. Walking away to grow also involves self-awareness. It requires us to look inward and honestly assess whether our current situation is fostering our growth or holding us back. This self-reflection allows us to make decisions that prioritize our personal development. Maybe we've realized that we're in a job that doesn't challenge us, a relationship that no longer feels healthy, or a routine that's become uninspiring. By acknowledging these truths, we're able to make a conscious choice to leave behind what's no longer working, to step into a future that holds more potential for our fulfillment and happiness. In choosing to walk away, we also learn to let go of our attachment to what once was. Many of us hold on to situations because we have memories, shared experiences, or investments that make it hard to let go. It's human nature to want to cling to what's familiar. However, growth requires that we release these attachments and trust that new, meaningful experiences await us. Letting go is an act of faith in ourselves and in the possibilities that lie ahead. It's the understanding that while the past has shaped us, we are not obligated to remain there. Walking away then becomes an act of liberation, freeing us to grow in new directions and discover different facets of ourselves. Walking away can also serve as a boundary, a way of protecting our peace and mental well-being. Sometimes situations become toxic, draining, or even damaging to our sense of self-worth. Walking away can also serve as a boundary, a way of protecting our peace and mental well-being. Sometimes situations become toxic, draining, or even damaging to our sense of self-worth. Certainly. Here's a powerful ending to tie together the themes of the speech. As we reflect on the courage it takes to walk away and choose ourselves, let's remember that growth often requires both the wisdom to honor our past and the bravery to embrace our future. Walking away silently isn't about giving up, it's about recognizing when we've outgrown situations that no longer align with our journey. It's about protecting our peace, respecting our boundaries, and trusting that each decision we make in service of our well-being is a step toward becoming our most authentic selves. So, as we move forward, let us walk away when we need to, let us grow without apology, and let us know that true strength lies not in holding on to what's comfortable, but in creating space for what's possible. In honoring our journey and choosing self-respect over explanation, we not only reclaim our power, but inspire others to do the same. Here's to the courage to choose ourselves, to walk our own path, and to grow silently but powerfully toward the life we deserve. Thank you.